Dead America. The Seattle Incursion Part 3 by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. Church playfully waved from the back of his train car to Garrett and his team as they got further and further away. Before long, they moved off the tracks and into the suburbs, embarking on their mission. Church continued standing there for a few moments, enjoying the cool air as the train continued on its final push to the train yard less than a mile away. Despite being so far behind enemy lines, the militia leader remained unbothered by the danger. It was as if he was enjoying the entire situation more than any rational person should. His solitude lasted a few more minutes, broken up by the radio on his hip crackling to life. "Church, do you copy?" came the voice of a militiaman. "Yeah, I'm here," Church responded. "Sir, we're 2 minutes out from the train yard." "I appreciate the heads up. I'll be ready to move when we arrive. I take it that you and your men know what you're supposed to do." "Yes, sir, we do. We're not only ready, but we're itching to get into the fight." "Good man. Do what you're supposed to do and you'll get home safe. Good luck out there, and don't forget to have a little bit of fun. It's not often you get to take the fight to your enemy, and it's even less often when you clearly have the upper hand with superior firepower. So enjoy yourself." "You too, sir. Give them hell." Church clicked off the radio before securing it back to his belt. He thought about it for a moment before pulling it off and throwing it over the side railing. "Don't really need you anymore, do I?" he muttered. Church stepped back into his train car, casually strolling across the interior to a table by the front end. A large electronic device sat on top, powered up and ready to go. Cables ran along the wall to the window, vanishing towards the top of the outside of the car. "Let's see how you boys do when you can't talk to each other," Church said. He reached down and flipped a switch, turning on the jamming device. A brief moment later, a smattering of gunfire popped off towards the front of the train. Most of the shots appeared to be coming from the militia side, with virtually nothing coming in return. "It looks like that's my cue to get ready." Church moved over to a side table where a selection of goods were laid out on it. He grabbed a couple of silver hatchets, securing them in sheaths affixed to the back of his pants before grabbing a tactical vest filled with spare magazines and hand grenades. Up next were 2 silver-polished handguns, one for each holster on his hips. The finishing touch was a black leather trench coat, which really brought the whole ensemble together. He stepped to the side of the table, looking at himself in the mirror. "I would say it's a crime to look this good. But given all the other crimes I'm about to commit, this one would certainly get pled out." The gunfire outside intensified for several seconds before falling silent. A moment later, Church could feel the train begin to decelerate. The brakes squealed in protest, bringing them to a halt. Church stepped to the window, seeing that they were in the heart of the train yard. To either side sat various cars and engines, some connected, some left on their own. Within seconds of stopping, several militiamen jumped off the train, rushing in various directions to set up a defensive line. Church watched from the window as a squad of 3 of his men leapt into action when they spotted soldiers moving on them from the east. 2 men flanked wide of their leader in the middle, laying down covering fire as he rushed forward to an orphan train car. The militiamen climbed to the top in a flash, crawling to the edge and opening fire towards the enemy. As quickly as it had begun, the gunfight ended. Church adjusted his view, seeing the downed soldiers 50 yards away, writhing on the ground in pain. He smirked once he realized his men weren't putting them down. "That's right, let them sit there and think about what they did. That's the only way they're going to learn." A knock on the back door of the train car drew Church's attention. With a wave of his hand, the militiaman outside stepped in. "Sir, we're securing the perimeter, but we have some resistance to the north. I'm here to escort you to the yard exit," the militiaman said. Church chuckled as he walked to the back of the room, grabbing an assault rifle off of a table and brandishing it. "Do I really look like I need an escort?" "No, sir, you don't. But I figured it couldn't hurt to have one nonetheless." Church hemmed and hawed for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. "Yeah, what the hell, you can tag along for a bit. I tell you what, why don't you grab that black canvas bag laying by the chairs over there?" The militiaman nodded and moved quickly, attempting to yank the bag off the ground, but finding it a lot heavier than he anticipated. The unexpected weight caused him to stumble off balance for a moment before gathering himself and slinging it over his shoulder. "Good Lord, what are you carrying in this thing?" "Just a little housewarming gift for our soldier friends. I'm sure they'll love it." Both the militiamen and Church let out a laugh as they exited the train, casually making their way to the ground as several skirmishes went off around them. Neither man seemed to be bothered by it, as none of the bullets were flying in their direction. They made their way up the tracks towards the front of the train, not moving with any sense of urgency. Church stopped near the front beside a cattle car that was still sealed up. He put his ear to the door, hearing moaning and banging coming from inside. "You know, far be it from me to criticize the way you run things around here, but do you mind enlightening me to the reason there's 100 rowdy soldiers still locked up in there? We had some trouble with the release mechanism and couldn't get it to open when it was supposed to. Once I saw our boys jumping off, I didn't want to risk flooding their zone until they got far enough away." It's not the worst reasoning I've ever heard. Close, but not the worst. Especially considering we had a good half-mile between the last men off and here. I thought about that, but I made a judgment call on the fly to have a last-ditch screw you to the soldiers if we get overrun. If they somehow manage to take us down, I want to make sure we're taking them with us. Church let out a chuckle, nodding his head in delighted agreement. "You know what? I was going to reprimand you for screwing up, but I like the set of stones you got hanging there. Any man willing to get eaten alive just to give one last middle finger to the enemy is okay in my book. Carry on." The militiaman was initially relieved that Church was no longer angry, however, as the thoughts of being ripped to shreds by a horde of angry zombies danced in his head, his demeanor sunk. "Come on, let's get you across that line," the militiaman said. Church nodded and continued following the militiaman as he led the duo away from the train towards the northern portion of the yard. Several gunshots continued going off to their left and right, however. Ahead of them, the gunfire intensified to an alarming degree. The militiamen came around the corner of a row of cars and immediately had to duck back behind cover as bullets pinged off the metal. Church caught the man before he fell to the ground, propping him up to his feet. "You know, you better go ahead and give me that bag. I'd rather not have it slamming into the ground if I can help it," Church said. The militiaman nodded, handing over the heavy bag that Church gathered with ease. The militia leader slung it over his shoulder before checking that his assault rifle was ready to go. "Let me take point there," Church added. Church moved around the militiaman, peeking his head out from cover to get a sense of the battlefield. 20 yards ahead, he spotted 3 of his comrades ducking behind cover, popping up and exchanging fire with half a dozen soldiers who were blocking the front entrance with an SUV. A couple of the soldiers were behind it, while the other 4 fanned out in either direction. "Well, that's a problem," Church muttered. "Can we get you out another way?" the militiaman asked. "I'm afraid not. That fence is 8 feet tall wrapped in barbed wire, and while I'm a lot of things, nimble isn't exactly one of them. Hell, even if there wasn't any barbed wire, I'd still run the risk of breaking my neck trying to climb it. So what do you want to do?" Church got a big grin on his face as he reached to his vest, freeing a hand grenade and holding it up proudly. "I need you to get up to your team and make sure they're on the same page. Then, when I give you the signal, unload on those bastards long enough for me to let this baby fly." The militiaman nodded before swapping places with Church, crouching down and breaking from cover. He stayed low while running up to the line, managing to get there unscathed. Church poked his head around the corner, watching the team get the message from their leader. Once they were set, he turned away, readying himself. The big militia leader pulled the pin from the grenade but held the lever down. With a big nod, he let the militiamen know it was time. All 4 militiamen moved as a single unit, popping up from behind cover simultaneously and unloading on the soldiers. The torrent of gunfire coming from them forced their enemy back behind cover just long enough for Church to rush into the open. Church got halfway to the line before uncorking a throw with everything he had. He allowed his momentum to continue carrying him forward as the grenade flew through the air. Church slid safely behind cover, keeping his eye on the grenade the entire time as it bounced on the ground a couple of times before settling underneath the SUV. The smile on his face grew when he noticed the 2 soldiers behind the vehicle didn't see his attack, standing their ground as if there was no danger. Boom, Church whispered. The grenade detonated, ripping through the SUV and the men standing just behind it. The force of the blast sent shrapnel in every direction, some of it striking the soldiers flanked on either side. Finish them, Church shouted. Church and the rest of the militia leapt up from behind cover, taking advantage of the situation and pumping bullet after bullet into the downed soldiers. Within seconds, the entire squad was down for good, leaving the militia in control of the front gate. Good job, men. Hold this line and make them pay. I'll see you back home, Church said. Church nodded to the militiaman as he picked up the pace towards the flaming wreckage at the front gate. As he approached, he noticed one soldier still barely moving to his left. Church paid him no attention until he was within a few yards of him, casually raising his rifle and firing a single shot towards him without breaking stride. This is going to be so much fun. Chapter 2. Church picked up the pace upon exiting the train yard, cutting over to the west a block before continuing towards his rendezvous to the north. The gunfire coming from the south remained steady, however. It was the sounds of footsteps to the north that concerned him. Church darted into the entryway of a brick building, which barely concealed his large frame. He kept a firm grip on his rifle, flicking a switch to full automatic mode as he awaited the enemy. Several tense moments passed as the boots on the pavement grew closer and closer from around the corner. His first instinct was to cut the lot of them down as soon as they got within sight. However, it sounded like there were a couple dozen of them heading his way. Church's finger danced around the trigger as he battled against his own worst instincts. Much to his own surprise, he managed to hold off on pulling the trigger as the first soldiers emerged from around the building. Two columns of men moved at a brisk pace to the south, trying to get to the western side of the train yard. Despite being less than 10 yards away, Church managed to remain hidden from their view as the soldiers' focus was firmly on what was directly ahead of them. Church continued crouching in the entryway for a good 20 seconds after the last soldier vanished from view, wanting to make sure it was safe to move before doing so. Yeah, they're running into battle, but they really have no idea just how lucky they are, Church said. Church chuckled to himself as he pulled himself off the ground and kept moving, getting up to the corner of the building and darting around it. As he emerged, he bumped chests with a smaller soldier, both men stopping dead in their tracks. The soldier was too scared to move, only having the ability to tilt his head back to look up at the larger Church. The militiaman looked down at the soldier like a hawk surveying its prey. A devious smile grew on the face of Church as he stared the man down. "Good morning." The soldier did his best to speak, taking a few seconds to overcome his terror and form full words. Good morning." "It's pretty nice out today, isn't it?" Church asked. The soldier again paused for a few seconds, struggling to find the right words. "It really is. I hear it's supposed to be nice again tomorrow." Church immediately caught on to what the soldier was going for, causing his smile to grow even more. "Is that a fact? Well, I tell you what, if we run into each other in the afterlife, I'll let you know if you were right or not." The soldier's face went white with fear as he began to backpedal, only to have Church match him step for step. The man opened his mouth to scream, but the large militiaman wrapped his hand around his throat before a sound could emerge. With a forceful squeeze, Church cut off the soldier's airway, causing him to flail in desperation. Rather than choke the man to death, the militiaman lifted the smaller man off of his feet and slammed him to the ground with as much force as he could muster. The back of the soldier's head smacked against the sidewalk, cracking like an overripe melon. He convulsed on the ground for a few seconds before falling silent. "If it's any consolation, big guy, I'm pretty sure I tweaked a muscle getting you off the ground. So it wasn't a complete shutout on my part," Church said. Church playfully patted the dying man on the chest before moving quickly up the street, taking a knee at the next corner and scanning the buildings. It took him a moment before he noticed a sports bar sitting in the middle of the block. "Bingo," Church muttered. Church looked both ways, making sure the coast was clear before darting out from cover. He rushed across the street, making a beeline for the front door and crashing through it. Church moved into the interior of the restaurant with his weapon raised, not entirely sure of what to expect. Before he could get too far inside, a voice rang out from near the back. "This location is secure and above your pay grade, soldier." "I'd move along if I were you," Jasper called out. Above my pay grade? I'm making more today than you're making all month, Church shot back. Church, Jasper said. Were you expecting someone else? Church asked. Church looked to the back of the restaurant, watching as 3 soldiers emerged from the kitchen. Their leader was Jasper, an older man in his mid-40s who carried himself with a sense of pride. Flanking him were his 2 younger counterparts, Felix and Oscar, both of whom looked like they were ready to throw down at a moment's notice. Sorry for the rude introduction, but we had a little trouble securing this spot. Hence the verbal bluff, Jasper explained. I'm Jasper, this is Felix and Oscar. Are we secure now? Church asked. For the time being. But I wouldn't recommend we stay here too long, Jasper replied. It sounds like you had some issues with the building. What about our transportation? Church pressed. We have an SUV with enough fuel to get us to where we need to go, but it's nearly a mile away, Jasper said. A mile? Are you shitting me? Maxwell talked you up so much that I was honestly expecting a little more. I mean, I didn't envision a limo or anything, but damn, making me hike a mile while we're being hunted, Church complained. With all due respect, Church, if you knew what we had to go through in order to secure a vehicle and a couple gallons of gas, you'd be singing our praises, Jasper said. Yeah, man, they have anything that's even remotely valuable on total lockdown. I'm talking multiple levels of security, rotating guards, the whole 9, Felix added. And yet we still found a way. I had to do some stuff I'm not exactly proud of, but I got the job done, Oscar said. Church let out a chuckle, easing the tension in the room as he walked over to the men. He smacked Oscar on the shoulder in a playful manner, getting him to lighten up a bit. Well, Oscar, I have enough nightmare-inducing shit already floating around in my head, so do me a favor and don't share your horror story with me. Just consider me grateful that you went above and beyond for the cause, and we'll move on from there. Deal? Church said. You got a deal, Oscar replied. Good man. Okay, so what's the plan? Church asked. There's another round of troops moving down towards the front lines, but it's disjointed. There was just enough communication to let them know that there was a problem, Jasper said. Good to know that they were able to get the word out before I shut them down, Church said. With any luck, we should have a clear path to the garage. Assuming our boys can hold their own at the train yard, Felix added. They're already cleaning house. So we don't have anything to. Church trailed off as he heard the front door of the restaurant being pulled open. Jasper gave the militia leader a hand wave, getting him to dart for cover behind the bar. This location is secure and above your pay grade, soldier. I'd move. Jasper began. A booming, angry voice cut through Jasper's bluff attempt. What in the fuck did you just say to me? Sergeant Lawrence demanded. Jasper perked up as Sergeant Lawrence and 5 other soldiers walked into the building, stopping 5 yards away from them. The 2 men locked into a stare down, which only enraged the sergeant further. Don't make me repeat myself, Lawrence barked. Jasper stifled his first instinct, which was to be a smartass, instead opting for a diplomatic solution to the problem. My apologies, Sergeant. I had a couple of privates try and hide from the battle in here, so I figured I'd put the fear of God into them. Well, that's all fine and dandy, except for the fact you 3 are hiding from the battle. The enemy is at our gate, and you're in here taking it easy, Lawrence accused. It's not like that, I can assure you, Jasper said. Oh, is that a fact? Give me one good reason why that is, Lawrence shot back. How's this for a reason? Church yelled out from behind the bar as he popped up, aiming his fully automatic rifle toward the soldiers. Before the men could react, bullets were flying toward them, cutting through their ranks. 4 of the 6 soldiers took rounds to the chest before they knew what was happening, while the other 2 dove for cover behind tables and chairs. Felix, Oscar, and Jasper didn't hesitate, drawing their sidearms and sending rounds toward the panicking soldiers. Handgun rounds splintered the wood of the tables with ease, piercing through and striking one of the men hiding behind it. The other soldier managed to squeeze off a couple of rounds through the table, forcing Jasper to duck for cover. Church leaped over the bar, running towards the last remaining soldier with his finger on the trigger. Once he lined up his shot, he sent the last 10 rounds from his magazine through the table and into the man. He stood in the middle of the carnage, laughing to himself as he pulled out a fresh magazine from his vest and slapped it in. For their part, the 3 militiamen checked the enemy to make sure they were down for the count. "Clear," Jasper called. "Clear," Felix echoed. Oscar raised his handgun and fired a single round to the ground before turning back to the others. "Clear." Jasper turned to Church, speaking in an incredulous tone. Well, that was certainly one way to handle it. The playfulness in Church's tone dropped as he stepped towards Jasper. "We're on a clock, and you were taking too long. And if this little display of violence bothers you, then you're not cut out for the rest of what's on our agenda today." "So what's it going to be, Jasper? Are you in?" Jasper remained silent for a few moments as he gathered his composure. When he finally opened his mouth, he spoke in a firm tone. "Oh, I'm in. It's just your little display might have given away our position. So I hope you have a lot of ammunition, because we're going to have soldiers on our tails." Church's playful nature returned, smacking Jasper on the arm before walking back over to the bar. "If I'm being honest, I kind of hope someone did hear those shots." "What? Why?" Jasper asked. Jasper stared at Church, confused, as Church grabbed the heavy canvas bag from behind the bar. He rummaged around inside for a moment before pulling out a block of C4, holding it up and smiling like a spokesmodel. "Because in 2 minutes, this place is going to be going up in a spectacular fashion," Church said. Church clicked a button, starting the countdown on the device as he tossed it behind the bar. The other militiamen exchanged worried glances as Jasper motioned for them to follow. "Kitchen door. Let's move," Jasper ordered. Church followed the leader as they moved through the kitchen, pausing briefly at the back door. Jasper cracked it open, looking out into the back parking lot to make sure it was clear before exiting. "You may want to pick up the pace a bit. My party favor isn't going to wait around too long before kicking things off," Church said. Jasper let out a sigh under his breath before leading the group out. The 4 men moved swiftly through the lot, getting to the road behind the building and making a hard turn to the west. They remained at a steady pace for a couple of blocks before Church let out a whistle to get their attention. "Hang on, I want to see this." Church stopped on the sidewalk, turning back towards the sports bar as the countdown in his head continued. 3, 2, 1. The light in his eyes grew exponentially as the fireball in the distance reflected in them. He stared with a satisfied grin as the flames and smoke rose high into the air, letting out a sigh once the initial excitement wore off. "Boys, take it from me. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your lives," Church said. Church gave them a wink as he turned and continued moving up the street. Felix and Oscar looked to their leader, each of them thinking the same thing. What in the world had they gotten themselves into? Chapter 3. The foursome continued moving through the streets, keeping their heads on a swivel for anybody tracking them. While they could easily be mistaken for normal soldiers looking for militia, blowing up the sports bar had undoubtedly put everyone in the area on edge. The group managed to make it 2 more blocks up before gunfire erupted from behind them. Felix and Oscar immediately dropped to a one-knee firing position, sending several rounds down the street towards a pack of soldiers, scattering them. One of their bullets found the mark, hitting a man in the gut and sending him to the ground in pain. The other 4 soldiers rushed for cover, a couple taking a prone firing position on the street, while the other 2 moved around the building. "There's 2 trying to flank us," Felix shouted. "I'm on it, take care of this lot," Church replied. Church patted Jasper on the shoulder as he walked by, grinning from ear to ear. Rather than question what he was doing, the militiaman jumped into the fray, raising his rifle and barking out orders. "Fall back to the corner, I got you covered," Jasper commanded. Church picked up the pace, making the turn onto the next street and dropping his rifle and canvas bag out of view beside a trash bin. He messed his hair up a bit while putting on a frantic face. Church began looking around frantically, like he was in a panic as the 2 soldiers came around the corner with their weapons raised. Neither man fired as they were confused about the situation playing out in front of them. It didn't take long for Church to spot them, yelling out in panic tones, "Oh my God, help me, help me. There's men, oh my God, they're killing people." The 2 soldiers exchanged concerned looks as they moved up, still not sure of what to make of the large, trench coat wearing man. "Sir, it's not safe out here. You need to get inside," one of the soldiers said. Church ignored the soldier's words and continued sputtering nonsense that occasionally formed complete thoughts. "Please, oh God, I can't. I've seen things I can't unsee. They shot a man right in front of me and tried. Oh God, they tried to shoot me." Church paced back and forth as if he were having a psychotic break, which drew the two soldiers in closer. One of them took point, slinging his rifle over his shoulder and putting his hands up in a defensive manner, hoping to calm the large man. "Okay, buddy, I just need you to calm down. Let's get you off the street because it's not safe out here," the soldier said. The soldier inched towards Church, who continued pacing back and forth. The militiaman looked past the lead soldier, seeing his partner had lowered his weapon as well. In a fraction of a second, the manic nature of Church's tone and movement stopped, replaced by a menacing glee. "You're right, it's not," Church said. Church darted towards the soldier, yanking a silver hatchet from underneath the back of his trench coat and swinging it upwards. The sharpened blade caught the lead soldier's arm right at the elbow, slicing clean through the limb. The soldier let out a deafening cry as he collapsed to the ground in pain. His partner froze in the moment, shocked by the attack. Church didn't hesitate, moving in for the kill. "Your turn," Church growled. The soldier attempted to back away, but Church was too quick, raising the hatchet above his head and bringing it down with force onto the side of the man's neck. With a single blow, a spurt of blood flew through the air, dropping the man to the ground. Around the corner, the three militiamen continued firing towards the enemy at the end of the next block. One soldier remained, firing from the corner of the building, making it difficult for them to get a clean look at him. "Moving," Felix shouted. Felix scrambled to his feet, rushing down the block as his partners laid down cover fire. Bullets slammed into the side of the building, buying their comrade enough time to get into a firing position on the other side of the street. "Come on, pop your head out," Felix muttered. Felix dropped to one knee, waiting on the soldier to return fire. As the man emerged from cover, the militiaman sent a single round towards him, catching him in the side of the head. The soldier squeezed off a round as his body tensed up from the impact before falling lifeless to the ground. "We're clear," Felix called out. Felix rushed back to the others, who continued watching down the street for reinforcements, relieved none were there. "Nice shooting, Felix," Jasper said. "Just another day at the office," Felix replied. "Speaking of shooting, I didn't hear any coming from Church's position," Oscar pointed out. "Damn it. Come on," Jasper said. Jasper spun around, rushing towards the corner of the building with the others following close behind. As they came around with their weapons at the ready, they froze in bewilderment at the sight. 10 yards ahead, Church stood over the wounded soldier, clutching the severed arm in his hand. The militia leader playfully smacked the dying man across the face with his own limb while taunting him. "Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself," Church said gleefully. The others stared at the sight, speaking in low tones, not wanting to alert him to their presence. "You know, I'm starting to think that he's not right in the head," Felix whispered. "You'd almost have to be to volunteer for a mission like this," Jasper replied. "Wait, then what does that say about us?" Oscar asked. "It's probably best we don't think about it too hard," Jasper muttered. Oscar contemplated for a moment before shrugging his shoulders. "Come on, let's collect him. It's not going to be long before we have more company," Jasper said. "If you want to break up his fun, be my guest. I'm going to keep a few steps back," Felix replied. Jasper let out a sigh as he walked up to Church slowly, clearing his throat a couple of times and finally getting the big man's attention. "Hey gang, how'd it go back there?" Church asked. "We eliminated the threat without much issue," Jasper replied. Jasper looked around Church, spotting the dead soldier up the street a bit, and the wounded man at his feet who was barely clinging to life. "It looks like you were successful too. And without using your gun," Jasper added. Church smiled as he pulled out one of the hatchets from underneath his jacket, showing it off proudly to Jasper. "Yeah, shooting people gets boring after a while, so I decided to break this bad boy out." Well, it certainly did the trick. But we really need to keep moving. Begrudgingly, Church nodded his head before holding the severed limb in front of the dying man's face. He began chuckling to himself, as if he were proud of the thought that ran through his head. Well, buddy, you look like you're down on your luck. Here, let me give you a hand. Church returned the limb back to its original owner before casually whistling a tune as he walked over to collect his rifle and canvas bag. Jasper glanced back to the others, who were mortified but too afraid to speak up. Are you boys coming, or what? Church called out. We're right behind you, Jasper said. Well, you may want to get ahead of me, because I have no clue where I'm going, Church added. Yeah, you got it, Church, Jasper replied. Jasper jogged up, getting ahead of the militia leader as they walked up the street. The next few blocks were relatively empty, with only the occasional patrol forcing them to duck behind cover. Are we there yet? Church asked. It's 3 blocks to the west and we're good to go, Jasper replied. Church let out a huff as they reached the next intersection, making the turn to the west. Jasper took one step out from cover before jumping back behind it, knocking into Church in the process. I'm flattered you made the first move, but I'm sorry, you're just not my type, Church teased. Jasper ignored the playful banter, motioning for Church to take point. You may want to take a look. Church poked his head around the corner, spotting 2 SUVs at the next intersection with half a dozen soldiers standing behind them. They had their guns aiming in all directions, as if they were expecting company. Friends of yours? Church asked. Oscar and Felix stepped up, taking their own look at the situation. What the hell are they doing? Felix asked. A makeshift checkpoint would be my guess, Jasper replied. So how do we get through it? Oscar asked. Maybe we backtrack and go around? Felix suggested. That's a hell of a hike, and we're still going to run the risk of being spotted when we cross, Jasper said. So we backtrack 3 or 4 blocks, Felix offered. And how do we know there's not another checkpoint down there too? Jasper countered. Maybe we can ambush them? There's 4 of us. 2 of us circle around while the other 2 hit them from this side? Oscar said. That's risky, but I think it's doable. Church, what do you think? Jasper asked. The 3 militiamen turned towards their leader, who was kneeling beside his large canvas bag. He rummaged about in there for several moments before pulling out an RPG. I think the ambush is the right idea, but I think I can manage most of it if you boys wouldn't mind getting in on cleanup duty, Church said. The militiamen stared in disbelief as Church stepped around the corner and sent the rocket flying. A second later, it smacked into the side of one of the SUVs, detonating in a spectacular manner. Church let out an excited yell as the others came around the corner and began rushing up towards the carnage ahead. Flames danced amongst thick black smoke pouring out of the wreckage. All 6 soldiers were on the ground from the impact, the few left alive struggling to regain their bearings. Jasper and the others were on them too fast for that to happen, however, pumping several rounds into them. Clear, Jasper shouted. We're clear, Oscar echoed. The militia looked up the road, making sure reinforcements weren't coming their way before turning their attention back to Church, who was strolling up the street towards them. Well, I have to say, that was messy but effective, Jasper said. Messy but effective. That's pretty much the best way to describe my entire existence, Church replied. Come on, the garage is just a few blocks up. And after this, we should really lay low for a few minutes, Jasper said. Lead the way, my friend. Lead the way. Chapter 4. The 4 militiamen continued rushing through the streets, finding them completely empty as they approached the garage. The gunfire from the skirmishes between soldiers and militia still echoed against the buildings but was faint. Jasper pushed forward, only to stop abruptly just before reaching their destination. Church frowned, stepping closer. What the hell are you doing? Isn't that the garage? It is, Jasper said, glancing back. But I haven't met this contact face to face, so I need to give them the signal so they don't cut us down on approach. Church thought about it for a moment before nodding in agreement. Yeah, okay, carry on then. Jasper pulled out a flashlight, aiming it toward the modest-sized garage across the street, clicking it on and off in a specific pattern. Once the cycle was complete, he kept watch on the building, spotting a similar series of lights coming from the bay on the right. Okay, we're good. Come on, Jasper said. The four men moved swiftly across the street, the rightmost garage door opening as they approached. Once they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them, leaving the group in relative darkness. Somebody really needs to show themselves, Jasper muttered. The interior lights of the building snapped on, revealing a lone man leaning up against an SUV. His dress was casual, jeans and a sweater, making him look less like a soldier and more like a civilian out for a fall walk. Jasper stepped forward. I'm Jasper, this is Church. Don't take this the wrong way, the man interrupted. But I really don't give a shit what your name is. Jasper raised an eyebrow. Alrighty then. So much for pleasantries. There's nothing pleasant about this. People are dying in the streets, the man replied. Church shrugged. They deserve it, though. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Well, aren't you just a bundle of joy? Church said dryly. The man pushed off the SUV, his expression flat. I don't really care about your fight or your cause. I just want to live out my days in peace, regardless of where it is. That said, I owed Maxwell a favor. He called it in, and I delivered, because I'm a man of my word. Fair enough, Church said, but I'm going to need a name from you if we're going to continue here. Well, sorry to burst your bubble there, Sparky, but I'm not giving any of you my name. Church narrowed his eyes. Is that so? Well, you better have a damn good reason as to why you're not sharing. Because I don't know any of you, and I have to live in this town after you're gone. Assuming it survives, of course. Church snorted. Oh, it will survive, but it will never be the same. Big talk from a group of four men. The man replied. Oh, don't worry, we're going to deliver on our promises, Church shot back. I have no doubt that you believe that, the man said. However, I think there's a better chance the military rounds at least one of your asses up. And when that happens, I'd rather you not have a name to give them when they ask who helped you. Church stared at the man for a moment, then broke into laughter. You know what? I like that answer. You're good in my book, so tell me what we got. The man gestured toward the SUV. Now the front of this vehicle has been reinforced, so if you have to bust through anything, like say their lines half a mile north of here, you'll have a relatively good chance of doing so. Jasper frowned. A relatively good chance? Yep. Nothing in this life is certain, kiddo, especially when it comes to ramming shit with a speeding SUV. The man smirked. But I did what I could, put a little muscle behind the front end, and I can guarantee that whatever you hit is going to get the worst of that transaction. Jasper nodded. I guess that's the best we can hope for. Now, what about the other thing? You mean your ride out of town once you do whatever it is you've been sent here to do? Yeah, I got that taken care of as well. The man motioned for the group to follow him over to the hood of the SUV, which had a map of Seattle laid out on it. A bright red line stretched from their current position to a building just north of the military headquarters, which was circled. You can take whatever route you want to, but I figured I'd mark down the easiest path, the man explained. The aquarium is 4 blocks due north of the military headquarters, so once you do what I think you're planning on doing, you need to haul ass there. Jasper tilted his head. Why the aquarium and not the docks? Because on a normal dock you're left wide open on all sides, and I get the sense you boys are going to be kicking a hornet's nest and will have some stingers chasing you. The aquarium has some dock bays built into the back of the building, so you'll at least have some cover getting to it. Church crossed his arms. What about our boat? I made a deal with a buddy of mine, had to give up one of my prized possessions, but I secured what is quite possibly the fastest boat in the state. At least the fastest that's still operational. It will be in the last bay on the left-hand side. It's got a cover on it to keep prying eyes from spotting it easily, and the keys are in the ignition. Is there anything else we need to know? Jasper asked. The man nodded. Yeah, you need to sit your asses here for at least 15 minutes so I can get far away from here. Oh, and the next time you talk to Maxwell, tell him to lose my frequency. Because if he asks me for anything else, he's going to end up owing me. And he's smart enough to know he doesn't want that. The man turned and walked toward the back door of the building, talking as he put on his jacket that was hanging on a workbench. I would say good luck, but I really don't care enough either way. Just make sure you don't hit anything north of the aquarium. Jasper blinked. Why not? Because there's a nice bakery up there, and it's one of the few pleasures I have left in this life. So don't mess it up. The man casually threw open the back door, allowing it to close on its own as he walked out without so much as a glance back to the others. The four militiamen stared at the rear of the building for several seconds, bewildered by the exchange. Well, he seemed friendly, Felix quipped. Oscar shook his head. Where does Maxwell find these guys at? Felix shrugged. I don't know. The scrap heap out behind the loony bin. Church let out a deep chuckle. That's where he found me, and it seems to be working out so far. Felix and Oscar exchanged a concerned look, hoping they hadn't angered Church. After several tense moments, the large militiaman let out a belly laugh, smacking Felix on the back. Relax, man, relax. I know I'm batshit crazy, and it doesn't hurt my feelings when someone points it out. Just don't make a habit of it, and we'll be all right. Felix's eyes went wide as he gave a subtle nod to the big guy. Come on, Church said. We have a little time to kill before we can take off, so I want to go over the plan one more time. Church led them over to the hood of the SUV, pointing to a bright red line stretching horizontally across it. Tell me about their defensive line, because it sounds like we're going to have to plow through it, which concerns me. It's really a defensive line in name only, Jasper replied. Church squinted at him. Then why is it drawn in bright red marker, Jasper? Because our mystery man is overreacting. I'm going to start overreacting unless you explain to me exactly what it is. Jasper let out a deep sigh, nodding at Church before taking a calming tone as if he were addressing a fifth grader. For the most part, it's just soldiers manning storefronts and rooftops. There are zombie response teams armed with riot shields and melee weapons. There are cars lined up across the intersections, but nothing too significant. So no guns? Church asked. Not exactly. The rooftop soldiers have sniper rifles. Church let out a frustrated grunt as he stepped to the side of the SUV, pulling out his handgun and firing a single round through the passenger side windshield. The bullet ripped through the glass, tearing through the back of the seat, scaring the other three militiamen in the process. Well, our mystery friend may have reinforced the front end, but he did fuck all to the windshield. If they have snipers on the rooftops, we're not getting too far. It's going to be a challenge, no doubt, Jasper admitted. But with as limited as the ammunition is around here, there should only be one sniper per intersection. Well, it's good to know that there's only one person firing at the driver instead of two. Our day is finally looking up, Church said sarcastically. Jasper shrugged. I think if we build up enough speed, we should be able to blow through it before they can get a clean shot on us. Church frowned. Unless I'm misreading the map here, it looks like it's a straight shot to the line. Every sniper I know can make that shot in their sleep. Well, if you have another idea, I'm all ears, Jasper replied. Church thought about it for a moment before shoving the map to the side and climbing up onto the hood of this SUV. He stared at the roof of the vehicle before cackling to himself. The other three militiamen exchanged confused glances with one another. Is everything okay, Church? Jasper asked. Oh, it's fantastic, Jasper. Absolutely fantastic. Sometimes my own genius even scares me. Okay, well, would you like to share with the rest of us? Church jumped down from the hood of the SUV, moving right past the others toward a tool bench. He began rambling as he clattered tools around. This place has power, right? Yes, it does, Jasper replied slowly. Great. Find me an extension cord and some goggles. Okay, Church, we can do that. Jasper looked over to Felix and Oscar, both of whom were thoroughly confused as to what was taking place. With a hand wave from their leader, the duo rushed off to fulfill Church's order. Before Jasper could speak up again, Church let out a celebratory yell, turning around and holding up a handheld rotary saw. "Oh yeah, we're in business." "And what kind of business are we in exactly?" Jasper asked, crossing his arms. "Well, for the next 10 minutes or so, we're in the car modification business. I know we're in Seattle where it rains 600 days a year, but I think it needs a sunroof." Jasper frowned. "Why do you want to put a sunroof?" He trailed off as Church's line of thinking sank into his head. With a smirk and a nod, he continued, "I'm tracking now. The sniper won't be an issue if there's no sniper." "Exactly. Instead of speeding up to the line, we take our time, lull them into a false sense of security, then blow them to hell," Church said with a wicked grin. "I assume you have something to handle that in that bag of yours?" Jasper asked. "I have that and so much more." Felix and Oscar walked back over to the duo, holding a pair of goggles and the end of an extension cord. "I'm pretty sure the outlet works, but if it doesn't, I can switch out the plug," Felix offered. Church nodded and grabbed the cord, quickly plugging in his shiny new tool. With a squeeze of the trigger, the saw spun to life. "Okay, boys, you may want to stand back, because I'm about to make some sparks fly." Chapter 5. Church sat in the back seat of the SUV alone, positioning himself in the seat he would be riding in. With a deep breath, he sprung into action, reaching into the back seat and grabbing an RPG before popping his head out of the giant hole in the roof he had recently finished cutting. It took him a little bit of maneuvering to get into proper firing position, but he nodded his head in satisfaction at his movements. "I'm feeling pretty good about that," Church said. "This thing has a hair trigger, so it's not going to take much to send that rocket flying." "With any luck, the sniper will be too focused on me to notice, until it's too late," Jasper replied. "They might have some spray paint laying around here somewhere," Church suggested. "Maybe we can get your vest a nice shade of orange or yellow. To really draw his eye to you." "I'm thinking that a lone SUV driving away from the battle might be enough," Jasper countered. "Well, you're no fun. Once we survive this and get back to Bend, the first round is on me. That's when I'll be fun." "Yeah, all right, I can work with that," Church said with a grin. "So are you boys ready to ride?" "I think it's been long enough," Jasper said. "Felix, grab the door." "I'm on it," Felix replied. "And shotgun." Oscar had his mouth open, as if he was going to call the front seat, but he wasn't quite fast enough for his partner. "Damn it," Oscar muttered. "I hate the back seat. There's never enough legroom." "Don't get your panties in a bunch," Felix shot back. "I'll move the seat up when I get in." Oscar let out a sigh, shaking his head as he opened the back passenger door. Greeting him was a smiling Church patting the seat next to him. "Room for one more," Church said. "Well, at least it's a short trip," Oscar replied. Jasper got behind the wheel, starting up the SUV and letting it idle for a moment while Felix opened up the garage bay door. As the automatic door slowly rolled up, Felix strolled back towards the vehicle. Within 3 steps, he saw Jasper frantically motioning for him to hurry up. "Oh hell, what now?" Felix asked, picking up the pace and sliding into the front seat before slamming the door shut. Rather than head out, Jasper kept the vehicle in park, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "What's going on?" Felix pressed. Jasper bobbed his head towards the front of the garage, where a patrol of 4 soldiers stood in the road. The men stared in their direction, drawn to the noise of the door opening. "I'll handle this," Church said. "No, you're going to sit still and let me handle it," Jasper shot back. Jasper's tone caught Church off guard, putting a smile on the big man's face. "I didn't know you had such a hellcat in you, Jasper. You should let him out to play more often." "Church, I need you to keep your hands in your lap, like you're our prisoner. I'm going to bluff our way past them." "Okay, I'll play nice. At least until it's time to play dirty." Church drew his handgun, gripping it tightly as he put his hands between his knees. He kept them low enough that it would be difficult for the soldiers outside to see he was armed, but high enough that he could quick draw on them. Jasper looked towards the road as one of the soldiers waved them in, while the rest of his team fanned out a bit. Their weapons weren't raised, but they were at the ready position. "Here we go. Everybody stay cool and let me handle this," Jasper said. Jasper put the SUV into drive, pulling out slowly from the garage. The thought to run them down popped into his head, but was dismissed just as quickly when he saw how spread out they were. The vehicle rolled slowly to the edge of the lot, pulling onto the street to the north before stopping. Jasper rolled down the window while keeping one hand on the steering wheel. "Nice SUV you have there," the soldier said. "Haven't seen these rolling around all that often." "Well, we're in a hurry, so I thought it would speed things along," Jasper replied. "That's a solid plan, but it makes you stick out like a sore thumb." "Is there a problem?" Jasper asked. "I don't know. You tell me." "We have our mission just like you have yours," Jasper said, "and it would be nice if we could get to it." "I'm going to need to know what that mission is, soldier, and who gave it to you." Jasper's tone turned confrontational as he stared the soldier down. "Yeah, that's not going to happen. In that case, we're going to have to hold you here until we can confirm you are who you say you are, especially since you have someone out of uniform in your back seat." "Look, man, I know you mean well, but we really don't have time for this," Jasper said, reaching over to throw the SUV into drive. Before he could hit the gas, the soldier beside him raised his weapon. The barrel was mere inches from his head, causing Jasper to put his hands up. "You really are making a big mistake," Jasper said. "That man in the back is a high-value target. I need to get him to headquarters right away." "Well, if that's the case, then why don't you boys jump out and let me drive him in? I'll be sure to give the general your names. I'm not out here trying to steal credit. Or you can calm your tits, lower your weapon, and let us be on our way," Jasper snapped. The soldier stared at Jasper for a moment, sensing that something wasn't quite right with the situation. "Sorry, but that's just not going to happen. Let's get them out." The soldier lowered his weapon to reach for the door handle. Before his fingers could grasp it, however, Church drew his handgun and fired a single round through the window. The bullet shattered the glass, finding a new home in the side of the soldier's head. Panic ensued as Church adjusted his aim to the soldier right beside him. He fired 2 quick shots without aiming, striking the man in the vest and sending him to the ground in pain. More gunshots came from the right side of the SUV, covering the interior in glass and blood. As quickly as it began, the gunfire ceased, with all 4 soldiers lying on the ground. Church threw open the door, aiming carefully and sending a round through the downed man's head, finishing him off. "Now that's how you negotiate," Church said. "Let's get moving." Jasper turned around, rattled from the intensity of the gunfire. "Is everybody okay?" "Yeah, just some ringing ears," Felix replied. "Oscar? Oscar," Jasper called out. Jasper reached back to his friend, who was slumped over, trying to check on him. "Come on, man, are you okay?" Church grabbed Oscar by the shoulder and pulled him back into his seat, his head flopping from side to side. The front part of his face was missing a big chunk from a bullet ripping through it. "Damn it," Jasper cursed. He smacked the steering wheel a couple of times in frustration but quickly regained his composure when Church put his hand on his shoulder. Rather than speaking in a playful or intimidating tone, the militia leader's voice carried a sense of genuine care. "I'm sorry about your friend, Jasper, but we have to move before anybody else comes this way." Church gave Jasper's shoulder one more firm squeeze before letting go. That one gesture was enough to get the militiaman back on task. He put the SUV into drive, gripping the wheel tightly before hitting the gas. "We're going to be at the line in a couple of minutes," Jasper said. "Look for the tallest building on the opposite side of the intersection and assume that's where the sniper is." "He'll never know what hit him," Church replied. "Well, that's good because we're already down a man, and I'd rather not be next." Church could hear the pain in Jasper's voice as he sped towards the northern line. He thought about saying something comforting but decided against it, instead focusing on grabbing his rocket launcher from the back of the vehicle. Less than a minute later, Jasper slowed the SUV to a crawl, nearly stopping in the middle of the road. "We're here," Jasper said. "The line is 4 blocks up, and if I had to guess, the sniper is on the roof of the building to the left. Church leaned up through the space between the seats to get a better look. He strained his eyes on the rooftop of the two-story building on the left before seeing some faint movement on top of it. "I got him," Church said. "I'm going to aim for the middle of the building and hope for the best. Even if it doesn't take him out, the detonation will force him to take cover, and should send up enough smoke and debris to cover us through the line," Felix added. "How much further to the headquarters once we're through?" Church asked. "Assuming we have a clear path? Less than 2 minutes, so you better be Johnny on the spot with that next rocket," Jasper said. "Don't worry. I'll be locked and loaded." "Good. I'll do my best to stop in front of it and give you a clean shot, but it's going to most likely be a stop and go because we're going to have soldiers on our asses." "I don't even need you to stop. Just keep it at a steady speed." "Okay, then it's showtime. I'm going to move slow to the next block, and as soon as you fire, I'm going to floor it, so be ready for it." "Oh, I'm always ready for it," Church said with a wink. He slid over to the middle of the back seat. Jasper took a moment to gather himself before gently pressing on the gas pedal, moving them up slowly. It took a few moments for them to get up the next block, and their presence drew the attention of a couple of soldiers on the ground ahead. They stepped out from the safety of the storefronts to get a better look at them. "You gotta go now," Jasper shouted. "I thought you'd never ask," Church said, pushing through the opening on top of the SUV. He quickly aimed his RPG and squeezed the trigger. "Eat this, motherfucker." The rocket flew down the street in a matter of moments, slamming dead center into the front of the store. The explosion rattled the surrounding buildings, shattering glass and sending the soldiers in the street falling to the ground. Church slipped back into the back seat as Jasper floored it. The SUV picked up speed rapidly, screaming down the road towards the two cars the soldiers were using as a blockade. "Brace for impact," Jasper yelled. The men in the SUV lurched forward as the front end of the vehicle crashed into the middle of the two cars, sending them flying to either side and clearing a path for the militiamen. Jasper nearly lost control of the SUV, but managed to get it back under control before wrecking. He kept the pedal pressed to the floor, putting distance between them and the line. Church looked out the rear window, seeing several soldiers emerging from the damaged building, collapsing into the street. He looked up to the roof, relieved to not see any movement. "The sniper is either dead or gave up," Church said. "So we're clear. Now we just need it to stay that way for another 2 minutes." Chapter 6. Jasper kept the pedal to the metal, screaming down the street towards the heart of the safe zone. Most of the citizens of Seattle were locked up tight in their homes, however. A few looked on as the militiamen drove by. While Jasper was transfixed on the road ahead, Felix kept his head on a swivel, looking down every side street they crossed for threats. Several soldiers ran about, however. None of them had vehicles, so their threat was non-existent. "We're 4 blocks away, Church." "You better be ready," Jasper called. "Just get me there, Jasper, and let me know when we're 2 blocks away," Church replied. Jasper nodded as he continued barreling down the road. However, he was forced to slam on the brakes and cut the wheel hard to the right at the next intersection. Church tumbled around in the back seat, cursing under his breath as he regained his composure. "What the hell, man?" Church barked. "They're onto us." 2 SUVs pulled out at the next intersection, Jasper said. Church turned to look out the back window, spotting the 2 vehicles coming around the corner. A split second later, several muzzle flashes exploded from the soldiers sticking out from the windows. The glass at the rear of the SUV cracked as a bullet pushed through it, narrowly missing everyone in the vehicle. Church began to pull himself up through the makeshift sunroof, but lost his balance when Jasper made another hard turn back to the north. "Damn it, man. Stay straight until I tell you to turn," Church yelled. "Okay, just don't wait too long to do whatever the hell you're going to do," Jasper shot back. Church got a big grin on his face as he stepped up through the opening above, pulling the RPG along with him. He brought the weapon to the firing position, waiting for the soldier's SUV to get within view. Come on," Church muttered. A moment later, the first vehicle made the turn to continue pursuit. Church reacted swiftly, squeezing the trigger and sending a rocket towards the enemy. The driver tried to react but wasn't fast enough to avoid the incoming fire. The rocket crashed into the windshield of the SUV, detonating upon impact. The force of the blast ripped through the cab, killing everyone inside and coating it in flames as the vehicle spun out. The flaming wreckage was more than enough to force the trailing SUV to slam on its brakes. Church let out a celebratory yell as he dropped back inside the SUV to grab another rocket. He barked out orders while reloading. "Turn when we're parallel with the headquarters and drive straight towards it." "2 more blocks and we're making the turn," Jasper said. "I'll be ready," Church replied. Church slapped in a fresh rocket before climbing back out into the open. The cool air felt pleasant on his face as a calm washed over him. Not a soldier in sight as they made the turn towards the enemy headquarters, just over 2 blocks away. "It's time for you to feel our wrath," Church declared. Church raised the RPG to firing position as Jasper got them closer and closer. The militia leader waited until they were half a block away from their turn to squeeze the trigger. The rocket flew towards the military headquarters and was right on target. A moment after beginning its journey, it slammed into the side of the building, detonating in a spectacular display of fire and rubble. Church tossed the RPG back into the vehicle as he smacked the roof in celebration. He continued yelling as they made the turn towards the north, the militia leader flipping off the shell-shocked soldiers with both fingers. Church slid back down into the SUV, continuing to yell in celebration at the direct hit. Felix allowed himself a moment to join in, letting out a yell of his own as he reached into the back seat for a fist bump from the militia leader. "Hell yeah, man. That one was one hell of a shot," Felix shouted. "It's a shame we don't have time. Because that felt so good I want to do it again," Church said with a grin. "Damn it, behind us," Jasper warned. Church and Felix put their celebration on pause, turning to look to the south. A couple dozen soldiers carrying rifles emerged from a neighboring building, running hard towards them. "We can handle them," Church said confidently. The militia in the front seat flinched as several bullets slammed into the front of the SUV unexpectedly. They looked to the north, spotting another small team of armed soldiers taking aim at them. "Hang on," Jasper shouted. Jasper cut the wheel hard as more bullets flew their way, most of them missing entirely while a couple hit the exterior of the SUV. He kept their speed up as they bounced over a concrete shoulder and into the parking lot of the aquarium. The gunfire coming from their rear continued to grow, forcing Jasper's hand. "We're going through the front. Hang on." All 3 men inside braced for impact as they crashed through the giant front window of the aquarium. Shattered glass rained down throughout the front lobby of the empty building, covering the vehicle in it as it plowed through the front welcome desk before finally coming to a stop. "Everybody out, let's move," Jasper ordered. Jasper and Felix leapt out of the vehicle, immediately sending rounds out of the front of the building towards the soldiers. Their suppressing fire was enough of a threat to send the enemy scrambling for cover, buying them precious seconds. "Come on, Church, we have to move," Jasper shouted. The militia leader slid out of the SUV, pulling his canvas bag out with him. He showed no sense of urgency as he slung the bag over his shoulder before retrieving the assault rifle from the back seat. "Let's move," Church said calmly. Church didn't fire a single shot as he walked away from the battle, leaving the grunt work to Jasper and Felix. They continued laying down covering fire as they retreated further into the aquarium. Just past the turnstiles that in days gone by would have let paying customers through lay a solid wall of glass on either side of a narrow walkway. On the other side of that glass sat tens of thousands of gallons of dirty, unfiltered water. The sea life that once thrived inside their enclosure long dead. "If they're smart, they'll lay off the assault," Felix muttered. Felix ducked down as a bullet screamed by him, mere inches from his head. He raised his rifle and fired several in return. "I guess they're not smart," Felix said. Jasper fired off a few rounds as they continued retreating further into the building. "Well, they either don't care about the building, or they're smart enough to know it's going to take more than a couple bullets to break this thing open." "Something like this, you mean?" Church asked. Jasper and Felix turned around to Church, who giddily tossed a block of C4 in the air, playing catch with himself. "Yeah, I'd say something like that would do the trick," Jasper said. And probably level half the building in the process, Felix added. Then we better not be here when it goes off, Church said with a grin. Felix turned and fired off a few more shots as the trio of militiamen rushed through the long, darkened hallway of glass. As they reached an intersection, Church tossed the block of C4 down the corridor to the right, just far enough for it to be shrouded in darkness. The docks are at the back. It can't be too much further, Jasper said. Jasper led the 3 militiamen into the back section of the aquarium, the soldiers still hot on their trail. The next 50 yards of interior space was littered with smaller displays, some encased tanks with several hands-on exhibits scattered about. Church stopped to inspect one of the displays, the inhabitants long since deceased due to neglect. Come on, Church, we have to keep moving, Felix urged. We need to bottleneck them in that glass hallway first, Church replied. Just blow it and come on. We'll be long gone before they figure out what hit them, Jasper said. And if we wait 30 seconds, there won't be any of them left to figure it out, Church countered. Jasper and Felix exchanged a glance, nodding that Church was right. Okay, one more knockout blow before we hit the high seas, Jasper said. That's my boy. Come on, let's have some fun, Church replied. The 3 militiamen took up positions behind the metal exteriors of the hands-on exhibits, partially concealed by darkness. They waited patiently for the first soldier to emerge from the hallway to strike. Church fired first, sending a round into the soldier's chest protector, dropping him to the ground in pain. Several of his comrades opened fire from the narrow opening, however, they weren't able to move forward due to the return fire from the militiamen. The wounded man on the ground slowly crawled back to cover, but Church struck again before he could reach safety. 2 rounds ripped through his legs, sending blood splashing onto the glass. He continued to call out for help as the soldiers tried in vain to break out from their bottleneck. A trio of soldiers made a push from the hallway, firing as fast as they could, while moving towards a display a few yards off to the side. Church was prepared, however, switching his weapon to full auto and sending half a magazine's worth of ammo in their direction. The stream of bullets ripped through their sides as they ran, missing their protective vests and sending them to the ground. Unlike the first soldier that took a bullet, none of them had the air capacity in their lungs to call out for help. Hit the detonator, Church, Jasper shouted. Church dropped his head in disappointment for a brief second before nodding. Yeah, okay, I know, we have to go. Church reached into his bag, grabbing the detonator and priming it. Before hitting the trigger, however, he poked his head back over cover, noticing that they were still relatively close to the aquarium hallway. We should probably back up a bit, Church said. Felix and Jasper nodded in agreement before laying down more covering fire for their retreat. The 3 of them moved quickly through the back portion of the building as the soldiers remained bottlenecked. Jasper spotted the door leading to the dock, calling out to the others and adjusting course. Felix stayed close to his point man as Church took a knee behind the last display, looking back to the front of the building, unwilling to miss out on the explosion. See you around, boys, Church said with a grin. Church hit the detonator, causing a massive explosion deep within the heart of the water hallway. The fireball briefly illuminated the dingy water contained within, before collapsing the entire structure in a spectacular display of carnage. Church let out a celebratory yell, throwing in a fist pump for good measure before rushing to join the others at the dock door. He pushed through, leaving Jasper and Felix to admire the wave of water destroying everything in the room. I can see why he wanted to watch that go off. That was badass, Felix muttered. Well, let's hope he has a few more tricks up his sleeve, because we still have to get through the bay. And those ships are going to have it out for us after what we just did, Jasper said. Felix's excitement dropped as the reality set in. He snapped back into business mode before turning and joining Church at the top of the interior dock. The majority of the space was bathed in darkness, however. The sun poked through the far end that opened up to the water, which was roughly 100 yards away from their position. All right, boys, let's find our ride and get out of Dodge. Chapter 7. Church led the trio down the dock, following the mysterious man's instructions and eventually finding their boat. The militia leader ripped off the top covering, revealing a top-of-the-line speedboat underneath. Mother of God, that's a work of art, Church said. He ran his fingers along the bright blue paint line that ran through the jet black coloring. He allowed his excitement to build until he couldn't take it anymore. He leapt into the cockpit, dropping his bag and weapon on the ground before taking a seat behind the wheel. He sat there for a moment, playing with the controls like he was a racing champion. Jasper and Felix climbed on board, watching their leader act like an excited 5-year-old. "Church, do you know how to drive one of these?" Jasper asked. "My heart says yes, but my head says no," Church replied. "And I think this is the one time I should listen to my head." "Okay, Felix, you're up," Jasper said. Church played with the steering wheel for another moment before swapping places with the other militiamen. Felix took a moment to look over the layout before turning the key and firing up the engine. "Oh, just listen to that. Purring like a kitten," Church said. "Just wait, because I'm going to have this thing moving like a leopard on the tundra in a few seconds," Felix responded. "I guess that's my cue to take my seat," Church said. "If you have anything in that bag that can put a dent in those ships, you might want to dig it out," Jasper said, "because I don't think they're going to be too happy with us." "Don't worry about those ships," Church replied. "They're going to have enough to deal with." Jasper gave Church a nod as both men found and secured their seat belts. "Hang on to your butts, because here we go," Felix said. Felix threw the boat into reverse, backing out of the docking bay and swinging it around. A moment later, he had it lined up with the open water ahead, pushing the throttle most of the way up. Everybody was pushed back into their seats from the sudden acceleration, the hum of the engine drowning out their ability to talk to one another. Once they cleared the building, Felix put the throttle to the max, picking up speed and racing away from land. They could hear a couple of gunshots popping off from the shoreline, but they were moving too fast for any of the gunmen to get an accurate shot. The engine whined loudly, propelling the boat further into the bay, drawing them ever closer to the wide array of docked Navy vessels. A lot of them were sparsely populated, however. The larger ones were still operational. It wasn't long until the alarms on them were blaring loud enough to be heard over the boat's engine. Jasper looked over to Church with concern covering his features, receiving only a grin and shrug of the shoulders in return. Jasper debated with himself, unsure if Church's lack of caring should instill confidence in him or unnerve him. He didn't have time to come to a conclusion as heavy machine gun fire erupted from the deck of one of the larger boats. Felix cut the boat sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding the line of bullets impacting the water. He continued pushing on, weaving around as another gun joined the fight. Felix let out a panicked scream just before pulling the throttle all the way down, decelerating rapidly to avoid the machine gun fire that was on track to cut their boat in two. A brief second later, he pushed the throttle all the way back up, cutting the wheel to the right and taking them closer to the attacking vessel. The normally calm Church unbuckled his seatbelt, pulling himself up and taking a knee right beside Felix. He yelled at the top of his lungs, hoping that it would be loud enough for him to hear. "Move away from the guns," Church shouted. "The closer I get, the harder it is for them to get an angle," Felix yelled back. "I know, but you need to listen to me. Move away from that boat now," Church barked. The firmness in Church's voice terrified Felix more than the possibility of being vaporized by a .50 caliber round, so he followed the order. Church retook his seat as the boat cut back to the left, moving away from the enemy vessel. Jasper looked over to the militia leader with fear and confusion in his eyes. Church smiled before turning around to look at the large warship. A few moments later, 2 gigantic explosions detonated on the deck of the ship, turning both .50 caliber machine guns into twisted, fire-drenched wreckage. Church looked back over to Jasper with a smug grin on his face. For his part, Jasper laughed it off, relieved that the danger had passed them for the moment. Both men looked back to the bay as they exited, watching several black plumes of smoke stretching into the air on both land and sea. Faint alarms could be heard on the warship, however, no other boat followed them. Felix kept the throttle to the max until they were several miles away from the bay. Once he felt like they were safe, he pulled it back, slowing down to a manageable speed. "Jesus Christ, I never want to do that again," Felix said. "Assuming Maxwell's silver tongue works its magic, I don't think you'll ever have to get within 10 miles of Seattle again," Church replied. "That's good, because I'm a small-town man at heart," Felix said. So where are we supposed to go from here? Jasper asked. Church pulled himself up from his seat, taking a couple of steps over to the console and flipping on the radio. He dialed in the appropriate channel before clicking on the microphone. This is Baby Bird calling out for Mama Bird. We are hungry and are ready to come home to the nest, Church said. There was a long silence on the line before a man's voice came over it. We read you, Baby Bird. What's your 20? The militiaman asked. We are a couple miles outside the bay and heading south, Church replied. Copy that. Continue on your current path for 15 miles and stay roughly a mile offshore. You can't miss us. I read you, Mama Bird. We'll be back at the nest soon. Over and out, Church said. Church tossed the microphone down before waltzing back to his seat, collapsing dramatically into it while throwing his feet onto the side of the boat. I've had a hell of a couple of days, so I'm going to shut my eyes for a minute. Let me know when we arrive, he said. Jasper looked over to the militia leader, letting out a chuckle at what he thought was a joke. Within seconds, however, Church was unconscious, as if he flipped a switch and went into sleep mode. That must be a nice skill to have, Jasper muttered. Jasper looked over to Felix, who was laughing at the scene playing out before him. With a hand flourish from his partner, Felix hit the throttle. After an uneventful 30-minute ride, the militiamen spotted a giant yacht on the horizon. Both Jasper and Felix let out a sigh of relief, knowing that the danger was over. Hey, Church, we're home, brother, Jasper said. Jasper stepped over to Church, giving him a light tap on the shoulder to awaken him from his slumber. The militia leader snapped to attention, looking around for a moment to gather his bearings before spotting the yacht. Leave it to Maxwell to send us a little bit of luxury after a job well done. I bet there's even some champagne on there, Church said. I wouldn't turn down a glass of that right now, Felix replied. A glass? You're going to have your own bottle, Church said. Felix chuckled as he pulled the speedboat alongside the large yacht, grabbing a rope tossed over the side by one of the militiamen on board. A moment later, they kicked over a rope ladder, helping the trio on board. It's good to have you back, Church, a militiaman said. It's good to be back, Church replied. There's some food and beverages in the first room of the lower deck. However, we do have Maxwell on the line, and he's very eager to speak with you. I bet he is. Lead the way, Church said. Church turned around to Jasper and Felix, giving them a nod before following the militiamen to the cockpit. You two behave until I get down there, he said. No promises, Jasper shot back. Church let out a laugh as they parted ways. It took a moment to walk around the yacht to the stairs leading up to the cockpit. As he ascended, another militiaman stood by the controls, holding the microphone in his hand. Good to see you, Church. I can wait below if you would like some privacy, the militiaman offered. There's no need for that. I'm eager to get back home, so you can start heading that way, Church replied. Right away, sir, the militiaman said. As the militiaman took the controls of the boat, Church settled into the seat next to the radio. Howdy ho, Maxwell, Church said. It's good to hear your voice, Church. Was the mission a success? Maxwell asked. It went better than we could have possibly imagined. We hit the civilian population hard, caused all sorts of chaos, and I scored a direct hit on their headquarters. Oh, and I got to blow up an aquarium, Church said. Maxwell let out a bit of a laugh, hearing the excitement in the big militiaman's voice. Well, I can safely say that I picked the right man for the job, Maxwell replied. You certainly did. They're never going to forget my name, Church said. Church paused for a moment, the expression on his face showing that the wheels in his mind were screeching to a halt over the last thing he said. With a laugh, he continued. Well, they wouldn't forget my name if they knew it in the first place. Say, Maxwell, I don't suppose you could tell them I'm the one that hit their headquarters, could you? I kind of like the idea of being the boogeyman of Seattle. Maxwell let out another laugh, clearly bemused by Church's enthusiasm. You have my word that I'll try and work it into the conversation, Maxwell said. And that's why you're my favorite leader, Church replied. That's good to know, Church. However, being a leader means that duty calls from time to time, Maxwell said. Yeah, I know, Maxwell. I put the fear of God into them, but you need to put the finishing touches on the day, Church replied. I do indeed. Now go enjoy the care package I sent along and get some rest. We will celebrate once you return, Maxwell said. I appreciate that. Good luck on the call, Church said. We'll see you soon, Maxwell replied. After the line went dead, Church replaced the microphone on the stand, sitting there for a moment and enjoying the cool sea air as it washed over him. Hey driver, how long until we have to get off this ride? Church asked. It shouldn't be more than 3 hours or so, the militiaman replied. In that case, I'm going to sit up here a little while longer and enjoy the view. I have plenty of time to get my drink on below decks, Church said. The militiaman nodded as Church leaned back in his seat, propping his feet up on the railing. A sly smile crept onto his lips, the satisfaction of the day beginning to fully sink in. The end.